Shalom, Hebrew students. Baruchim habaim lesefer Devarim. Welcome to the book of Deuteronomy. So far in our Torah classes, we've learned several greetings. During the book of Deuteronomy, we will be reviewing all 4 of them. Today I chose to open the class with Baruchim habaim, which means welcome. We have finally traveled along our way and reached the last book of the Torah. The name of the portion for this week's lesson is Devarim, which means words. If you turn to page 45 in your jot and tittle notebook, we will begin our class by reading from Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1. Follow along in the Hebrew as I read the text. Let's begin. Ele hadevarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael be'avar hayarden b'midbar ba'arava mul sof bein Paran ubein Tofel ve'Lavan ve'Hatzeret ve'di Zahav. The translation is, these are the words that spoke Moshe to all Yisrael across the Yarden, in the wilderness on the plain opposite Suf, between Paran, and between Tofel, and Lavan, and Hatzeret, and Di Zahav. Now, the last several words in the last couple of lines of our reading today are all places. Paran, Tofel, Lavan, Hatzeret, and Di Zahav. Let's look for a moment at the first line of our reading. Ele hadevarim asher diber Moshe. Do you recognize any of the words in that first line? By this point in time, you should definitely recognize the word Moshe, the name of Moses. Do you see it there, the last word in the first line? What about the word asher? It means that. It's a very important word that's used very frequently. Let's look now at the second line. Can you spot any words with which you're familiar? Tov me'od, very good. If you said Yisrael, you are doing very well. What about the third line, the middle line? Is there anything that you recognize from that line? This one's a little bit more difficult, but if you recognized Bamidbar, the first word, in the desert, then good for you. Let's take a moment to remember that a bet placed before any word means in. The first word of the third line, Bamidbar, means in the wilderness. Bamidbar was the last book of the Torah which we studied together, the book of Numbers. Let's look for a moment also at the last 2 lines of the Torah portion between all of the place names. Here we have the word bein, bet, yud, nun sofit. It's listed 2 times in the 4th line, and it means between. Look at the second time that it's printed, however. It has a vav in front of it. Do you remember what a vav in front of a word means? That's right, it means and. In the last line, we have the vav in front of Lavan, in front of Hatzeret, and also in front of Di Zahav. It means and Lavan, and Hatzeret, and Di Zahav. Always remember these clues as you're reading the Hebrew. Remember that you may have to study a word from time to time and look at the beginning and the endings of the word to see whether or not there are clues of other words added. At the bottom of page 45, we find our related words for this week. The first 2 words are pronounced exactly the same, davar and davar. The first one, however, is a verb, and the second one is a noun. It is interesting in Hebrew that the same exact word can be used as a noun or as a verb. As a verb dabar, it means to speak or to say. As a noun, devar means a word or a message. In several of our Torah portions, we have opened with the statement, Ve'yidaber Adonai el Moshe. The word yidaber, Yud Dalet Bet Resh, is the verb form of davar, which means and he spoke. Here in our first line, we also have davar Moshe, which means Moses spoke. If you look at the first line, you can read Devarim, the second word, and Devar, the fourth word, and you can quickly and astutely point out the root, Dalet, Vet, Resh. The first time the word is found, Devarim, it means the words. The second time it is found, Devar, it means spoke. Next in our related words, we have the saying en devar, which means it doesn't really matter, or never mind. Next we have alo devar, which means you're welcome. Next we have divrei hayamim, and it means the words of the days, or chronicles and history. Another name for the Ten Commandments is Atzeret Hadibrot, or the 10 words. The next phrase we have is Yesh Raglaim Ledavar, which means there is substance to it. Literally, it means there are legs to the thing. And last, we have Kidvarecha, which means so be it, or as your words stand. As we close our lesson today, I want to remind you to study carefully the roots of the Hebrew words that you're learning, and to also be aware to look for a bet at the beginning of a word meaning in, or a vav at the beginning of a word meaning and, or a mem at the beginning of a word meaning from. And I also want to encourage you to continue reading on in the Hebrew text of your Torah. Hopefully by this point in time, you have acquired your own Hebrew text Torah. This is a wonderful exercise, and it will help you improve your reading and your speaking, and most importantly, your understanding of the biblical language. Lehitraot for now. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.